What is up, all you individuals out there? It's me, full-time anime man, and today is currently July 15th, which is Izuku Midoriya's birthday. And I was thinking, let's give him a gift, as well as all of you. For just about a year back, I put up a poll asking what elemental wolf would you guys want next? And Wind/Air Wolf won the title. So, we're doing that today. If you all want this story to continue, let's get this video up to 100 likes, if that's not too much to ask. Anyway, hope you all enjoy the story. Let's go ahead and get into this. This is What If Deku Was a Air/Wind Wolf. Hope you all enjoy. One night, a group of men were on their way home, driving through a wooden area after a hard day of work, when suddenly, a bright red light was spotted in the distance in the sky. Wow, what is that? I think it might be a fire. Should we go check it out to see if anyone needs our help? Some of them objected to that, well, except for one man who was asleep, Hasashi. They go and check it out, heading deeper into the wooden area. When they arrive, they found the source of the light, although it wasn't a fire. Instead, it was a strange glowing saucer just hovering in midair above the trees. It was half circular on top, but it had this sort of flat circular plate on the bottom, like an alien ship. The men watched in bewilderment. One of the men woke up Asashi, and letting his curiosity get the best of him, he gets out of the car without anyone noticing. They see him getting closer to this UFO, and they yell at him to get back into the car, but Hasashi doesn't listen. Instead, he reaches up to touch this thing, and suddenly, out of nowhere, the saucer emitted this beam of light that struck Hasashi in the face. He stood there as if he was under hypnosis. The men yelled his name, but then suddenly Hasashi was struck by an invisible force that caused him to launch 10 feet into the air and landing on his back with smoke engulfing his body. The men watch in horror, and they urge the driver to go. It took him a couple of seconds before starting the car up and then driving away. But then, after what felt like a short time, they drove back to quickly retrieve Hasashi's body. And unfortunately, he wasn't there. And neither was the flying object. Soon, Hasashi wakes up and he finds himself in a strange room. To him, it appeared to be more of a cell because he was behind bars. Like, did he do something wrong that he can't remember? He tries to stand up, but he was barely able to. But he was also feeling sick and disoriented. Oh, what happened to me? He tries to think of what happened, the last thing that he remembered before he was knocked out. But even doing that gave him a great headache that it was almost like his brain was about to split in two if he tried to think any further. Suddenly, he heard the sounds of doors opening, but it sounded more like a swoosh, like electrified doors. He thought he was going to see people, but instead, he saw what he could only describe as aliens. They tried to take him, but Hasashi fought back, blowing fire in their direction. However, the aliens would use their technology using this sort of baton-looking weapon, and they would hit Hasashi with it, giving him an unhealthy dosage of amps of electricity, incapacitating him. They drag him away, and they put him in an even bigger room, but it was poorly lit. The stink of wet dog and feces hit him hard. Hasashi looks around, and he sees a single hanging light. Walking towards the light, Hasashi hears the sounds of a stomach growling, and an elongated feral growl like a dog. Hasashi quickly ushers towards the light, and he gets under it, and he uses the light to see his surroundings. When he did, he found the source of the sound. In front of him was a Mexican wolf, also known as Lobo Wolf. It was angry, and it was hungry. Hasashi would blow fire at the wolf, causing it to run away, but this wolf had the element of surprise, the darkness that very much engulfed both of them. The wolf would then get the upper hand on Hasashi and it would tear him apart, limb from limb. When the aliens came in to stop the conflict, they saw Hasashi was on death's doorstep, with his guts and his blood all over the place. He was barely alive, and just begging for all of this to just end. They take him and the Lobo Wolf to this machine that separated them, each of them in this sort of glass pods that separated them. Each of them in this pods that were made of glass. And from those pods, there were these sort of wires and tubes that connected to this certain pedestal that had this sort of light bulb screwing mechanism. The aliens would take this sort of glass container that had what appeared to be this swirling vortex inside of it. They would then attach this thing to that mechanism, and then they would activate the machine. At first, a loud noise would in pursuit, and then flashing lights would engulf the animal and the human, but the animal vanished, and the vortex that was in the glass container had vanished as well. In Hasashi's pod, it was filled with smoke. When the aliens opened the door, the smoke leaked throughout the crevices as it continues to open, revealing Hasashi, only he had changed. His body wasn't the same anymore. He was half man, half wolf. His wounds were healed. He looked like a wolf walking on two legs. His face was extended out like that of an animal. Fur was all over his body. He had wolf ears and a wolf tail. And it was at that moment Hasashi's body started having an adrenaline rush. As he attacked his captors, ripping them apart, and while he was doing that, he noticed that these aliens, they don't bleed red, but instead, they bleed green. More reinforcements showed up, and Hasashi managed to outrun them. He would run and run and run until he realizes that he can run faster and for longer times. When even more obstacles got in his way, Hasashi realizes that his strength also greatly increased. Like, for example, as the doors were about to close on him, he managed to stop this one door that was 10 feet thick, using all of the strength in his body to hold it up while he squeezed through it. Soon, Hasashi is being pursued by almost everyone in this ship, but then he entered the ship's control room, and he killed the pilot, and he purposely drove the ship into the side of a snowy mountain, causing a fiery explosion. All the aliens on board died. However, Hasashi survived, and he made his way to the bottom of the mountain before anyone could come and investigate. It was dark, and when he reached the bottom, he looked at himself in the reflection of the river that flowed, in complete denial of what the aliens had done to him. What did they do to me? A few years had passed. We meet a woman with notes, and for a while, she has noticed this man in the back corner of the classroom, always wearing a black hoodie, concealing his identity. She wasn't sure what it was, but his concealed identity made her grow a strong interest towards this man. When class had ended, the strange man had left the second the bell had rang. Inko couldn't help but follow him to at least try to engage in a conversation with him. The man was halfway down the stairs when his ears caught the attention of a girl's voice. Hey, I noticed that you didn't take any notes on for the exam that's coming up. You can borrow mine if you want. The man says, "Don't worry about me. I have a very, very long memory, and I don't really need it right now. Thanks anyway, I really appreciate it." He starts to walk down the stairs, but the girl says, "Hey, maybe you and me could do something sometimes after class?" He chuckles. "You mean a date?" "Sure. Why don't we meet in front of the school after classes finish? Then we could talk more details. How does that sound? Sure. My name's Inko. My name's Sasashi. And so the two would hit it off. They would see each other every day after class for like a month. And one night, Inko asked Hasashi if he could remove his hoodie. And letting a deep breath expel through his nostrils, Hasashi takes down his hoodie, revealing himself. And to Inko's surprise, he looked completely normal. He had fuzzy black hair and he had light freckles on his cheeks. I hope my looks don't scare you. Inko giggles. I have to be honest, I thought there would be something else going on. Oh, trust me, there is more to this face than meets the eye. I have an unwanted flashback ensues inside of Asashi's head. A very sad backstory. And so, Hasashi would tell Inko the truth about what happened to him when he was a little younger. When the aliens fused him with this wolf, and in some ways, that wolf inside of him is still alive. He does tend to get out sometimes, but he would never harm people, at least not the same way that he harmed me. To Inko, this sounds unbelievable. Aliens actually existing? Such a concept scared her that there's actually life beyond the universe that they know. However, hearing this story made her even more interested into Hasashi. And they would continue to hang out every day after school, and one day, when they were out, it was dark and the moon was up. And one day, Hasashi told Inko that he had something he wanted to show her, but he wanted her to close her eyes first. She does. And after a few seconds, she tells Hasashi that she's going to open her eyes. And she witnesses Hasashi transform right in front of her. She sees his face extending out and his ears reforming on top of his head, his muscles expanding out and fur engulfing his body. Hasashi opens his eyes as they illuminate in the darkness and says, Inko, what do you think of me now? It's quiet, but then Hasashi says, Inko, me and my friend here, we could never come to an agreement. However, ever since the day we saw you and you showed us kindness, we both have come to an agreement. We both want to protect and love you. She does not say anything. Instead, she hugs Hasashi closer to her, and we transition to her bedroom with all of her clothes removed. Are you scared of me? She shakes her head. No. Are you going to leave me? She shakes her head again. No, I won't. Because it's you. Hasashi then places his hand that had claws at the end of each fingertip on one side of Inko's face as he planted his elongated snout on her lips, and the two made love that night. The sun had just risen, and Inko woke up to see human Hasashi right next to her. She smiled, and a few hours passed, and Inko felt sick, as if she was going to throw up. She checks herself into a clinic, and this is when she finds out that she's pregnant. She told the news to Hasashi, who, in return, hugs her tightly out of joy. He was going to be a father to a woman that he actually loved. However, Hasashi had a secret that he could not bring himself to tell her. That being that he might have gotten another woman pregnant a few weeks prior before they even started dating. And unfortunately, Hasashi was drunk that night, so he couldn't remember who the woman was. So he doesn't even know for sure if she is pregnant. But he does know that he woke up next to her in her bed. And so, for the past 9 months, everything would go normally for Inko and Hasashi. And luckily, the two did manage to graduate from college before their baby had arrived. Soon, July 15th had came, and Izuku was born at home. It was a rainy day, But when Hasashi held his son in his arms for the first time, that day shined brighter than the light that struck him in the face. After a few months, nothing really seemed anything different with Izuku. He didn't show signs of any werewolfism or any transformations. It's probably for the best, said Hasashi. One day, the world would change forever when the aliens started invading Earth and destroying properties here and there. All nations banded together to fight against this alien army. Hasashi, not wanting anything to happen to his wife and child, joined the Army Air Force to protect them. And one day, inside of his jet, Hasashi had his shot to deliver the final blow that would end all of this. But his rockets got jammed. And no one else was able to get this perfect shot because Hasashi was the only remaining flyer in the sky. Hasashi's life started flashing before his eyes, and he says to his commanding officer, "Tell my wife and child that I love them very much." "Private Hasashi, what is it that you're going to do?" He chuckles. "I'm going to take my revenge, sir. Goodbye." Taking a deep breath, Hasashi then takes off his respirator and he turns into his halfling form, and saying, "All right, you alien assholes. In the words of my generation, Anata no Kato!" He enters the beam of light that was about to destroy Japan. And as he does this, he says, "I'm not letting any of you hurt my wife and children." Our chapter ends here, but my sons will carry on my story. He then crashes into their weapon, causing a devastating explosion, but in the process, it killed Hasashi. But it did kill all the aliens. On that day, the world would thank Hasashi Midoriya for his heroism and his heroic sacrifice. Inko, however, was sad that her husband was gone, and now she had to raise her son all by herself. However, the people of Japan promises to look after her and her child. It's the least that they could do, considering her husband sacrificed himself for the world. 4 years had passed. It was Izuku's birthday, and he was excited because he was going to find out what kind of quirk he was going to get. But sadly, he was told that he wasn't going to have a quirk. And Izuku would sit in his bed the whole day. But Inko would come and talk to him, saying that it is still possible for him to be a hero. He just needs to do things his way. With or without a quirk, the quirk doesn't make the hero. It's always the person and their desires to protect others. She hugs him. "Whatever you decide to do, I know your father will be proud of you." The young boy would hold his mother tightly, and we skip to the next day. Izuku had just met up with his friends, Bakugo, and told him that he's not going to develop a quirk. Bakugo would start to make fun of Izuku, and this is where his nickname would come in, Deku. To this day, Izuku hates the word Deku. Years would pass, and during those years, kids would pick on Izuku and even call him a disgrace because his father did great things, and yet he's doing absolutely nothing. But one day, when Izuku was 10 years old, Inko had suffered a terrifying car accident. She was comatose, and Izuku remembers sitting by her side for days until he went back to school. Other kids heard about his mom's situation, and they gave him a break that day. However, Bakugo still gave Izuku a hard time, and at one point he went too far. Izuku was getting ready to leave at his locker, packing things up, when suddenly he was approached by Bakugo, who commented on his situation. "Not today, Kachan, please." Oh, please, don't think that just because your mother is hurt, that doesn't mean that you get any sympathy from me. Izuku tries to pay him no attention, but then Bakugo slams his locker shut, but in the process, Izuku's hand was caught in between the locker frame and the door. He screams in agony. Ouch! Why did you do that? Because don't turn your back on me, especially when I'm talking to you. Kachan, please, I'm not having a good day so far. Could you please? Shut up, said Bakugo. Another kid steps in. Come on, Bakugo, leave him alone. Bakugo doesn't listen. Look, no matter what happens in your life, you're still going to be a useless Deku, because you're never going to be as good as your father. I know I won't. Another kid steps in. No, Izuku, don't listen to him. He's only acting like this just because his father walked out on him and his mom. Bakugo shouts back, Shut up! You don't know anything. But how about I tell y'all something I know about Deku's mom? I heard that she's a grade A whore. Izuku pauses for a second from Bakugo's insult about his mother, and something inside Izuku wakes up, and he stood up and walked towards Bakugo, his face inches away from his, and says, Say that one more time. Bakugo smirks and says, Your mom's a whore. Suddenly, adrenaline starts flowing throughout Izuku's body, and he hits Bakugo with a closed hand, and Bakugo flies backwards a few feet away, and Izuku yells, Keep my mom's name out your damn mouth! Suddenly, Izuku's face extended out and fur started engulfing his body. Izuku can feel this feeling of power and strength enhancement. He feels claws extending out of each fingertip. Other kids stare in amazement as they saw his transformation in progress. Whoa, Deku, I mean Izuku, I think you just unlocked your dad's quirk. He looks just like his father. Bakugo stands back up, also staring in bewilderment. Wait, no way. He just unlocked his quirk. I wonder what he can do. Let's find out. Ha! Okay, so you got your dad's quirk. Why don't you show me what else you can do with that? Explosions crack off in Bakugo's palms, and Izuku raises his fists up and the two charge at each other, and Izuku throws a fist, but it doesn't connect with Bakugo. But Bakugo blew back anyway, because of some sort of invisible force that caused him to fly backwards, which made him crash into a wall, breaking a rib in the process. Other kids cheer for Izuku because his father lives on through him. That, and he finally got his quirk. Unfortunately, Izuku was called to the principal's office in his normal form. Though the principal does chastise him for starting a fight, he lets him off with a warning, considering the fact that he just unlocked his quirk. That, and he's kind of proud of him. Izuku goes to the hospital and talks to his comatose mother, telling her that he got his dad's quirk, and that it felt really good, that it was like setting myself free. And I was at that moment, Izuku wished that his father was there. Tears start to fill his eyes, and he cries for his dad to be here with them, and for his mother to wake up. A few days had passed, and people have been more nicer to Izuku, especially what they saw him do to Bakugo. That day, they were taking a school field trip to a farm with a very large field. As soon as they arrived, they were informed of an unscheduled tornado occurring soon. However, the kids were already playing in the open field. They tried to get them all together, however, they were short by one, Bakugo, who was far out in the fields. Izuku uses his enhanced abilities to see where Bakugo is. He was very far away, and just above were the clouds as they started to swirl, meaning the tornado was forming. A grown-up tries to run out to get Bakugo, however, Izuku is the first to run in with tremendous speed. Lightning starts striking near Bakugo. He wanted to run, but his fears took him, freezing him in place. However, Izuku quickly grabs him and pulls him away, but lightning strikes the ground again, and the wind starts to pick up around both of the boys, forming a tornado. Things started flying around the boys. Both of them were unable to breathe due to the high winds. Bakugo cowers on the ground into a ball. Izuku is now in protective mode, and he would raise his hands up to protect any other object that would fly towards them. However, Izuku is unable to focus due to the loud noises and the lack of oxygen. Suddenly, he hears the voice from the wind. Izuku. What? Who called my name? Izuku, listen to me. I'm listening. You must focus on the air around you. Feel the power as it surrounds your body. You are one with the wind and storm. You can control it. You just have to focus on my voice and push the wind back. I can't control all of this. Believe me, my boy. You can do this. You just have to control your breathing. Listen to my voice, and you will stop this weather event. Izuku takes a deep breath in. Okay, I'll try. Izuku takes another deep breath in and he focuses on the voice. And suddenly, the tornado expands out, giving them space, as the wind settles around them, with quietness filling their ears. Bakugo looks up and he sees Izuku controlling the tornado. And then he looks into the heart of the hurricane. As he looks into outer space, Izuku smiles with joy, tears filling his eyes. I can control the wind. The voice speaks. That's right, my boy. Don't you worry about a thing. I will be your guide whenever you need me. The tornado subsides, and everybody witnesses as they all stare at Izuku in amazement. And that's where I'm going to do it for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you made it to the end of this video, consider yourselves #blessed, and I hope you all have a nice day. Goodbye.